just where all the three tinea coli converge. So when you enter the abdomen, the basic understanding that how do you find where the appendix is, that is a common problem that the surgeons face, is that you have to see where the three tinea coli converge. The point of conversion, you will find that the appendix is present. Now the appendix has a lot of positions, and why is it important? Because based on the positions, the patient can present with the different presentations for appendicitis. Let's say, for example, if the patient presents with pain in the right hypochondrium and fever, in such a case, you will suspect that the patient is having acute cholecystitis. But on doing a USG, you will see that the appendix is inflamed because the appendix was placed in subhepatic position. Similarly, there is a retrocecal, that is 12 o'clock, a pelvic, a pre and a post ileal, a subcecal, a paracecal position. Let's come to the blood supply of the appendix. The blood supply appendicular artery is a branch of the ileocolic artery. Accessory appendicular artery is also there, that is called as the artery of Seshachalam. And appendicular vein drains into the ileocolic, which in turn drains into the superior mesenteric vein. We can see that ileocolic artery is here, and a branch of this is the appendicular artery, which is found in the mesoappendix. So mesoappendix is important because during operation you have to identify the mesoappendix and tie the mesoappendix so that there is no bleeding. Let's come to acute appendicitis. The etiology for acute appendicitis is that dietary factors, one, but the most common being obstructive appendicitis. That means there is obstruction at the base of the appendix, and more commonly fecaliths are found. There is also a non-obstructive theory, that is the bacteria proliferates into the appendix and causes acute appendicitis. Let's come to the clinical features. I am sure you will be coming across your practice a patient presenting with pain, and typically pain in the right iliac fossa. So this pain is there, it is severe and colicky in nature. This colicky is called as periumbilical colic, and initially it is felt in the umbilical region, then localizes to the right iliac fossa. There is vomiting due to reflux, pylorospasm, anorexia, fever and constipation. These are simultaneous findings. Let's come to the clinical signs. This is important. There is tenderness and rebound tenderness. Tenderness is what you normally palpate, and rebound tenderness is that when you are done with palpation, as the appendix is removed, the palpation is removed, the patient will complain of pain. This is called as rebound tenderness. Guarding and rigidity are signs of acute peritonitis, which is a late feature in appendicitis. Once not treated, it can lead to peritonitis. Rovsing sign, palpation of left iliac fossa causes pain in the right iliac fossa because there is shift of bowel and gas. Hyperesthesia at the Sharon's triangle. Swas sign. These are just signs, you have to just mug up the signs. It is not clinically very important. Swas, obturator and Dunphy's sign. Let's come to investigations. Obviously, in any acute condition, WBCs will be raised. That should be your first point to see in any investigation. CRPs will be raised. Now, an important point for when you're operating is that NLR. These are recent studies. Neutrocyte is to lymphocyte ratio. This is a predictor for difficult appendix. So, if the ratio is more than 7, that means the appendix will be difficult to operate. USG is done to diagnose appendicolith, periappendiceal fluid collection, appendicitis. All these can be seen on USG. And obviously, if the patient is presenting with peritonitis, there will be gas under the diaphragm. So, does anyone know that gas under the diaphragm can be due to peritonitis and also another condition that mimics gas peritonitis, but it is not actually peritonitis? Does anyone know? No. It is called as bowel loops are present above the liver. In that case also you can see gas under the diaphragm, but that is not typically peritonitis. So here in this picture you can see this is a CT cut of a patient having appendicitis. You can see that the appendix is inflamed over here. There is increased water. Over here also you can see that this is the appendix, this is inflamed. This is the cecum and this is the appendix. This is how you identify. Now there are different scoring systems that is used for appendicitis, Alvarado score is commonly used. Based on this scoring, you can see score of 1 to 4, there is a 30% chance of appendicitis. 5 to 7, it is a 66% chance of appendicitis, so the patient needs to be admitted and monitored. And 8 to 10, obviously the patient requires surgery and there is a high chance of appendicitis. Can everyone see this? So this is a general approach to a patient presenting with appendicitis. This is mostly for early presentation. That is, symptoms onset are within 48 hours. So obviously now this is divided into male and female, because a female patient of the right age presenting with pain, and you should suspect that whether the patient is pregnant or not, medico-legally. So a male patient having classical presentation and there is localized peritonitis, that is only pain localized, and the appendix is not perforated. In such a case, you should go for laparoscopic appendectomy after relevant investigations. In case of equivalent equivocal presentation, that is vague presentation, you should go for a CT. Now, CT shows clear appendicitis, go for lap appendectomy. But CT is negative for appendicitis, then you have to keep the patient for observation. On observation and treatment for antibiotics and painkillers, there is no improvement, you should go for diagnostic laparoscopy to diagnose what has happened. And if the patient is improving, discharge the patient. If any other diagnosis there, treat accordingly. Now, for a female patient, if there is no pregnancy, you should get a CT done. Same protocol is followed. If CT shows appendicitis, go for lap appendectomy. Now, laparoscopic appendectomy, the patient is put in Trendelenburg positions and right up. There are 3 ports. Basically, there is one 10 mm port, that is the camera port, and 2 5 mm ports. Now, this is the absolute port is the right iliac fossa port, and another port is your suprapubic port. Before any laparoscopic procedures, you should go for a catheterization to deflate the urinary bladder and prevent injury to the bladder. These are the steps for laparoscopic appendectomy. So on entering the abdomen, you should first look where the bowels are, and you should see if there is any pus in the abdomen. That shows that if there is the appendix is perforated or not. After seeing that, you should follow the bowel loops and see where the tinea ends. You can see a dilated bowel, that is the cecum, and on finding the cecum, you will see that the appendix is present there. Usually in cases of acute appendicitis, the appendix is adhered to the bowel. So very slowly and gradually you should dissect the appendix, remove it, locate the mesoappendix, tie the mesoappendix, cut the appendix and take it out. This is in rough. We'll go on to open appendectomy. Position needs to be supine and the operation is done under GA. Now over here you can see that there are different kinds of incision that is given for appendix, but the most commonly used in practice is the Lanz incision. Lanz incision. This follows the Langerhans lines. Why is Langerhans lines important? Anyone? For cosmetic purpose. There is healing is better. Yes. Okay, see, this is the tinea coli. And tinea is ending over here. What is there at the end of the tinea coli? You can localize the appendix at the end of tinea coli. On localizing the appendix, this is the mesoappendix. You can see that the mesoappendix has been dissected and a window has been made over here. You should tie the mesoappendix that contains the appendicular artery. If you don't tie the mesoappendix, what will happen? There will be bleeding. So that needs to be tied. On tying the mesoappendix, you remove the vascular supply of the appendix. After that, you crush the base of the appendix and cut the appendix. In this surgery, what they've done is they've buried the stump of appendix, but this is not routinely practiced. Now, complications after appendectomy. Paralytic ileus, hemorrhage due to slipped ligature, that is common after any surgery. Residual abscess if you've not drained the abscess completely. And during appendix surgery, ilioinguinal nerve can get injured. If that happens, then that can lead to right inguinal hernia. This is a common Viva question. Why do you see hernia after appendix surgery? It's due to injury to the ilioinguinal nerve. Now, let's come to a patient who's come after 48 hours, that is delayed presentation. So, there is diffuse peritonitis present. That means that the appendix has perforated and there is gross pus in the peritoneum. And if the diffuse peritonitis is present, obviously you have to go for resuscitation. Patient can present with shock, antibiotics, and fluid has to be given. After the patient has been resuscitated, then you should go on to further diagnosing What condition led to peritonitis? If there is no diffuse peritonitis present, that means you're lucky and the patient does not have the complaints, then you go for a CT. Appendix is confirmed. Now, if the appendix is normal, there is no abscess, then you should go for lap appendectomy. But if there is an abscess, lap appendix is going to be very difficult, and because of abscess, the planes that separate the appendix from the different bowel loops is distorted. And if you try to dissect the appendix, it will lead to bowel injury. So you should be very careful. Even advanced surgeons don't go for appendectomy in case of abscess formation. CT drainage is feasible or not? If CT drainage is feasible, then you should go for drainage and antibiotics. And if it is not feasible, then obviously you have to go for a laparoscopic approach. And if CT shows appendix is confirmed and there is a mass formation, then you should go for non-operative management. Can anyone tell me, this is a common term used for non-operative management of appendix? That is called as a Sharon's regimen. Okay, we'll come to that. Now, appendicular mass formation. Now, the localization of infection occurs 3 to 5 days after an attack of acute appendicitis. The patient has not been given any antibiotics and it has led to severe infection. What happens here is the appendix, the omentum, the bowel loops and the peritoneum, they come together, join and form a mass. Mass is smooth, firm, well localized, all these things are there. Differential diagnosis for a mass in the right iliac fossa. Obviously to any mass there can be carcinoma. Crohn's disease, there is thickening of the bowel loop that can lead to mass sensation in the right iliac fossa. Mesenteric lymphadenitis. This is again, I have seen a lot of patients coming to OR with pain in the right iliac fossa and they don't have appendicitis. Still we go for a diagnostic lab and we see that there is mesenteric lymphadenitis. In such a case, we only take out the lymph node and send it for biopsy. Most commonly, it is seen in actinomycosis also. TLC needs to be done. Now let's come to the non-operative management that is done in case of mass or abscess. It is called as the Ostner-Sharon regimen. That is expectant management. You have to give IV fluids, antibiotics, painkillers. And antibiotics should have both anaerobic plus aerobic cover. And the patient has to be NBM. Apart from that, if the patient is not NBM, can anyone tell me what can happen if you give fluid or food orally to a patient with appendicitis or peritonitis? Anyone? Not you. Anyone else? It can lead to, because in case of acute conditions, inflammatory condition, bowel goes into aperistalsis or ileus. If in, yes. So in such a case, if you keep giving on food, the patient will add into obstruction. You need to check the vitals, temperature, size of the lump and pain routinely to monitor the patient. Now after this, two things can happen. The patient can either go into recovery or the conditions can worsen. In case the patient goes into recovery, you should discharge the patient and consider the patient for interval appendectomy. That is after 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. And if the patient condition worsens, that means obviously you have to remove the nucleus of infection from the body so as to prevent, let the body heal. In that case, you have to go for extra peritoneal drainage. Ostner-Sharon regimen is discontinued if the patient condition worsens, there is suppuration or abscess formation, and the size of the mass increases. Contraindications for non-operative management is obviously when diagnosis is in doubt, or elderly or children, they are usually immunocompromised, and in burst or gangrenous appendicitis. Appendicular abscess, it is because there is suppuration in case of acute appendicitis and there is gross leakage of pus, so you have to drain out. And it is commonly seen in the retrocecal region because that is a dependent position. Clinical features: high fever, toxicity, peritonitis, guarding rigidity. Ultrasound confirms the diagnosis. In such a case, antibiotics, patient has to be NBM. CT guided aspiration, if possible, needs to be done. If not possible, laparoscopic drainage has to be done. And after the patient has recovered, interval appendectomy is done usually 4 to 6 weeks later on. The differential diagnosis for such a case. Let's come to mucocele of appendix. Why mucocele of appendix is important? Can anyone tell me? Has anyone read appendix? No one. So mucocele of appendix, what happens in any mucocele? you should suspect that the exit point of that organ has been blocked. So blockage can be cause of a lot of reasons. Can anyone tell me any reason to blockage of appendix? Fecolith, okay. Apart from that, anyone else? Worms, yes. Anything else? Can a mass obstruct? So adenocarcinoma is also seen. When a mucocele is found, you should suspect that there can be an adenocarcinoma at the base of the appendix. And that changes your treatment protocol by a lot. So that is very important. So it can be neoplastic or non-neoplastic. It occurs when the proximal end of the lumen gets slowly and completely occluded. So what happens, because of the obstruction, mucus gets on accumulating in the lumen, which is called as mucocele of the appendix. Again, it can get infected to form empyema of the appendix. Now this rupture of the mucocele can lead to a release of mucus into the peritoneum. This is called as pseudomyxoma peritonei. That means collection of mucus fluid in the peritoneum. Now, in case of neoplastic conditions, this condition is called as generalized pseudomyxoma peritonei, and non-neoplastic it is called as localized pseudomyxoma peritonei. Now, mucocele is found with mucus secreting adenocarcinoma, and if that is the case, right hemicolectomy needs to be done, because otherwise the patient treatment is not complete and the patient will present with you with again pain and recurrence of adenocarcinoma. Clinical features will be mimicking appendicitis, colicky pain, tenderness, same things. Ultrasound abdomen will show appendix is inflamed. Treatment will be appendectomy. But then again, this has its own catch. Appendectomy is not the full treatment. It depends upon the size of the, we'll come to that. Appendicular neoplasia that we read about, the mucocele, why it forms. Most common tumor that is seen in appendix is not adenocarcinoma, is NET, neuroendocrine tumor, and the most common site is also appendix, or it is also called as carcinoid tumor. Now, carcinoids release a lot of substances, hormones. I have not covered that in details. We'll cover that in a carcinoid class. Diagnosis, again it can be an incidental diagnosis, and if you suspect it, then you have to go for immunohistochemical staining, IHC staining, which will be positive for synaptophysin and chromogranin A. These are important points for your exams, because carcinoid is diagnosed based on IHC. Now let's come to management. If the mass is more than 2 centimeter or close to the base, you have to go for right hemicolectomy. If it is less than 2 centimeter and away from the base, now there are two criteria. If it is less than 1 centimeter, you should go for only simple appendectomy and follow up of the patient. And if it is 1 to 2 centimeter or poorly differentiated, T4, you should go for right hemicolectomy. There are different kinds of carcinomas that are seen, which is rare goblet cell carcinoma. Epithelial tumor, it is a non-NET, it is a epithelial tumor. Now let's come to approach of a patient with appendicular neoplasm. This question is not going to come for you guys, but in general just know the treatment. The tumor is more than 2 centimeters. What did I say? You have to go for more than 2 centimeters? Right hemicolectomy, right? No. Is the base involved? Again, if the base is involved, that means there is a chance that there is some nucleus of the infection in the cecum. In such a case, you have to go for right hemicolectomy. So look for the base involvement. If no, then you have to see if there is perforation at the base or not. If there is perforation and there is evidence of mucin spillage, then you have to, mucin spillage means what? Perforation, okay, but mucin spillage into the peritoneum, I just now discussed it. Not mucocele, mucin entry in pseudomyxoma. So if there is pseudomyxoma, then we come to the treatment of pseudomyxoma, gradually we'll come on to it. If there is no pseudomyxoma, then we go for appendectomy. Now let's come to adenocarcinoma. If there is diagnosis of adenocarcinoma, what happens? Sometimes you miss out on the mass and you go for a simple appendectomy. That is what is done in routinely. What basic surgeons follow, they don't see. And after removal of appendix or any organ for that, say you have to send the organ for HPR. After 8 to 10 days, the HPR report comes and you see that there is a adenocarcinoma. Then you have to go for a completion hemicolectomy after appendix surgery. This is what they are saying, tumor found after appendectomy. that means adenocarcinoma is seen, you have to go for a right hemicolectomy. If there is a neuroendocrine tumor is less than 1 centimeter, you have to only go for observation. This will be there in the biopsy report. If it is more than 2 centimeter, you have to go for hemicolectomy. And again, there is appendiceal mucinous neoplasm. Low grade and aggressive, based on that the treatment will be defined. Let's come to pseudomyxoma peritoni. Pseudomyxoma peritoni, one of the causes for mucin spillage into the peritoneum is appendicular perforation. But that is not all of it. It can be also due to ovarian mucinous neoplasms. Or there can be primary peritoneal carcinoma that is seen in BRCA mutations. Can anyone tell me what is BRCA mutation? Not you. Anyone else? For breast, yes, it is commonly seen in breast carcinomas. In breast, you will be asked what are the two types of BRCA mutations, BRCA1 and BRCA2. Based on those mutations, the symptoms of breast carcinoma will be defined. BRCA1 being more aggressive. Now let's come to the clinical features for this. Same, there will be progressive abdominal distension, and because of this, there will be bowel obstruction. As there is collection of mucus in between bowel loops, there will be irritation of bowel loops, and because of irritation, there will be ileus, and ileus will lead to obstruction. Now investigations, CECT will show mucin deposition in omentum, and omental biopsy has to be done to rule out if there is any kind of omental carcinoma or anything. Now treatment for pseudomyxoma, if it is of neoplastic origin, you have to go for a cytoreductive surgery, that is R1, R2 resection, appendectomy, primary involvement of appendix only, then you have to go for right hemicolectomy. Apart from that, omentectomy needs to be done. Stripping of peritoneum that has come in close contact with the mucin. These mucin cells can have cancerous cells, and that can lead to deposition of tumor cells onto the peritoneum. So peritoneum has to be removed. And apart from that, HIPEC has to be given. Hyperthermic intraperitoneal chemotherapy.